Earlier this year, the NMC identified 5 essential challenges, 5 wicked problems that seemed so complex that they would require extraordinary solutions. And I was curious really about the first provocation, a simple one. Just rethink what it means to teach. Reinvent everything about teaching to ensure that education is more experiential and hands-on, to emphasize good choices and ethical decisions. To me, this has 2 underlying questions that really derive this wicked problem. One is a pedagogical question. How should we teach it? How should we teach? And the second is really around a leadership question. How do we embed this vision into our practice? This is a really personal question for me because teaching is in the lineage of my family. I think back to my own grandmother, Ruth, who taught in a one-room schoolhouse in Southern California at the turn of the century. And I think she might even be hurt by this provocation because, frankly, it says to her, or it might say to her, that teachers may not play an instrumental role in the lives of students. So it begs the question, well, what are the qualities of a venerated teacher? What are the key competencies that teachers need to develop? Many of us have heard this old saying, this expression that really lives in infamy. Those who can do, and those who can't teach. You're probably just as offended as I am when you hear this expression, because at its essence, it tells us that as teachers, that simply all we do is present information. We present ideas. And if you look at the 20th century model of schools, many that you could probably walk into in this day and age, you can see that most schools really value the idea of knowing stuff. That the best role for the teacher to play is to sustain them, to be in the center of the room, to make sure that the individuals, the students, are rewarded for their work, and that really for teaching at the end of the day is about the consumption of information. How quickly can you consume and return those ideas? All bound within the safe walls of a school, usually and even most disarmingly, with one voice, the voice of the textbook. And in essence, really what we're all attempting to do is really around this idea of education. It's a radically different idea than teaching. If you think about the classical Latin definition of the word, educare, it's really about drawing forth from the learner. It's about nurturing the learner. It's not about imparting knowledge. And if we think about our most rarefied form of curriculum and pedagogy, the one that really most schools have been working with for the last 20 or so years around project-based learning, it's really designed for the teacher, first and foremost. It's about the teacher creating situations, problems that can be solved. It's about the teacher directing what those problems should be. It's about activities and solutions that, frankly, are scripted. There is a way to find the solution. And mostly it's about imparting concepts or disciplinary knowledge. And this is really the pedagogy question, where in fact, at the school that I work, what we've been working on recently is around the idea of developing a curriculum that has relevance in mind for students, that really grows students to become capable, culturally competent, justice-oriented citizens. And project-based learning, teaching, may not necessarily align so well with that. So again, I come back to this question, what we came to at our middle school most recently, about rethinking what it means to teach, to create a curriculum that is experiential, that is hands-on, that does emphasize good choices and ethical decisions. And I have to say, to the credit of the folks who served on the Challenge-Based Learning Advisory Board, the Challenge-Based Learning Framework was a salvation for us. And it should be no surprise, because if you look at it, challenge-based learning really shifts the conversation to having students design questions and solutions. And frankly, from what I witnessed, solutions that can miserably fail. And that's a good thing. It allows for the opportunity to engage in the process and move away from this idea of creating a final project or a final product. Because what we're really measuring is the solutions that they bring to bear. And at my own school, our own middle school faculty, relatively traditional faculty, in our first year, according to our faculty, they self-reported that majority of them felt like the CBL experience was a positive affect for them. Overwhelmingly reported that working in triads across disciplines was something substantially better than being an individual in a classroom. And that they found, surprisingly, that working with different ages, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, had a positive correlation to the kind of work that they could do in the challenge-based learning program. So big shifts in education, and challenge-based learning may point part of that way. Shifting from knowing to doing, Shifting from being the teacher in the center of the room to being really thinking about what the needs of the learner are first and foremost, moving away from the individual rewards to the team reward, thinking about networks and crowdsourcing, and moving away from this idea of the valuing high-stakes testing and really trying to think about, well, what does a demonstration of learning look like? So that answers the curriculum and pedagogical question for us, or at least I should say opens the door for us and really busted the door open wide. But it begs the question for teachers, what does professional growth look like? And so some of this is based out of the work of the MacArthur Foundation's Digital Media and Learning Initiative. And although they're focused on the student, I would argue that teachers are lifelong students. And so what we've been thinking about, myself and some colleagues from different schools, from different school districts, is the idea of bringing teachers together who might share an academic or subject matter expertise, but frankly, want to be in a peer culture that wants to experiment, that is really interested in pursuing ideas that they think matter to them, rather than ideas or professional growth opportunities that are mandated for them. So I have some good friends, superheroes, if you will, Molly, Sean, Ben, and Mark. And a couple years ago, we formed this Justice League, this idea that bringing together 4 different school districts from the Twin Cities, ranging from Hopkins and Bloomington and Edina and White Bear, and in one private school, the Blake School, that we could do better work as teachers. And this is based on Ben Friesen's idea that, of creating something we call the HIVE. And so the HIVE was the idea of moving out of a single cell, a single classroom, that is really interconnected to the honeycomb of learning, and really trying to think of us as a colony of collaborators, to bring teachers together with no funding, but who just wanted to do things differently. And so I have to say the last couple of years have been probably the most rewarding professional experience for me personally, because similar to the NMC Ambassador program, I'm finding myself working with educators who want to think about change in their classroom, which may not be supported in their individual school or in their school district. And it's no surprise, because if you think about the traditional form of professional development in K-12 schools, there's this model, one person being sent off to a far-flung conference to seek like-minded individuals. And there's an importance to that, but I would argue that maybe that doesn't bring substantial or systematic change to schools. There's the disciplinary-based model, which really sees teachers as subject matter experts, so experts in science and math and English and social studies and so on. Frankly, just simple rows simple rows or simple plans that, based on just better subject matter expertise, we could teach better. And then there's this other model, this idea of mandated school professional development or district level professional development, where all teachers receive the exact same kind of growth opportunities, as if we all grow the same at the same time. And what I would argue is that we need to start thinking about a VERSAILLES model of professional growth, of structured ways of getting together, of getting faculty together for professional learning opportunities, that teachers are working together systematically to look at frameworks like challenge-based learning, or design thinking, or how to reduce stereotype threat in the classroom, or how we as teachers, as well as working with our students, can develop these Dweckian growth mindsets, or how to develop rigorous formative assessments, things that we're interested in, not necessarily mandated to do. So this big shift, right? This big shift in education is one that we stand on the precipice of thinking about both professional growth opportunities as well as classrooms moving towards places that involve doing, that involve the construction of meaning, that involve the aggregation both locally as well as online, around creating localized sense of committed educators who are interested in similar ideas. And so this idea of the HIVE, this idea of bringing together a colony of collaborators has served us really well, and one that I think could substantially change education. So we come back to our 2 original questions. How should we teach, and how should we embed the vision? And as I start to think about this more and more, it really comes down to 2 different kinds of questions. How do we learn to make ethical decisions, ones that matter for both relevance and conscientiousness, and how and who should embed the vision, the teacher leadership question? And with that in mind, I think my grandmother Ruth would want to be in this localized version of a one-room schoolhouse, one that's substantially different than the one that she taught in 80 years ago. Thank you.